is going on, everybody? KMK here on GeForce TV for episode 62 of the Power Hour. Yes, that's right, Wes. Gord, you're a day early. Adam and Clinton is tomorrow for Race Rivals Race Chat. This is the Power Hour. We talk all things NASCAR Pinty Series. Not much to actually talk about today. Lots of rumors, but very, very quiet on the actual news front. The reality is, in our series, people like to keep things very quiet. But there are rumors, which we can definitely dive into. And we also want to, I also want to take some of this opportunity to talk about maybe the other NASCAR series, which is not something that we typically do here on this show. But I think there's a lot that NASCAR South could really we could dive into here on this show as well. The playoffs continue with Christopher Bell getting the win at Homestead Miami Speedway. I have my feelings on the playoffs. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as well on the system as a whole. We've actually had, believe it or not, people suggest that the playoffs should go to the NASCAR Pinty Series. I have my thoughts on that. Definitely hope you have yours as well. Have there been any statements given about the schedule? Because Montreal, it wasn't Montreal for sure. Okay. So, Jim, the situation with Montreal right now, I believe is fluid in terms of it's not dead, but it's dead for this year. The schedule's already been announced for the Cup Series. It's not going to happen. In terms of the other divisions right now, I actually believe it's quite disappointing that they couldn't come up with even a solution for next year. We can dive into kind of the Xfinity and the Truck Series schedule. I really don't think that the Xfinity or the Truck schedule are very interesting at all. It's a far cry from what I remember and what made those schedules very unique in the past. And while the Pinty Series, I think, has a perfect balance of races at different types of racetracks across all provinces, I can't really say that the top three divisions down south really are as interesting to me in terms of their variety. And the reason that is, I think a lot comes to the treats that we get with the NASCAR Pinty Series. The racing that we see with it is just so incredibly good. But I think, Jim, the big point of all of the conversations, what came out of it was that Bob Pockrass did not say that next year that's out of the question. So whether or not this is a situation where they definitely have a idea of going there, that is definitely on the table. If you've got Bob Pockrass saying that it came down to Iowa or Montreal for next year, for basically for 2024, I would hope that they have the idea to maybe fit it in somehow. And then it comes to why. Why did they not make the decision to go there? What's the big rumor? You want to tell us? We'll dive into some of the rumors, Jimmy, because there's a couple of them. I can tell you that it's not Montreal. That seems to have dissipated once the talk of the Cup Series not going to Montreal next year dissipated. And it is. I think it's quite disappointing, the fact that, okay, well, the Cup Series is not going to come, but now you're going to have Xfinity or trucks either. And it just, I don't know the criteria. I don't know if, and I think we have to consider what's happened with Iowa Speedway is the huge investment from Hy-Vee to make that speedway what it is. And they've got definitely a lot of pluses, whereas I don't know the funding for Montreal right now. The funding situation is always difficult. CTMP, so Gord, that's part of the problem though, is that there doesn't seem to be any sort of interest to go back. Trucks are basically ruined by money, as in NASCAR got too greedy and charged too much to the tracks per race and only wanted to go to big tracks, which could afford them, and live pit stops after live. Trans Am Series coming back to Mosport. It sure is. Trans Am Series coming back to Mosport, and apparently it's going to be a shared weekend with the NASCAR Pinty Series. As long as they stay for Labor Day sprints, the NASCAR Pinty Series will tie up with Trans Am. Now, you can just debate whether or not you think that's a downgrade from the Truck Series or not. There's a lot of great people that love the Trans Am Series. That's a series that has come back to life from death multiple times. And while it doesn't have, I think, the reach that maybe Trans Am had 15, 30 years ago, it is definitely a step in the right direction for making a big event once again for Labor Day sprints. Truck Series coming back, that's again a different story. I don't see that that's the route that they're ever going to take again, because I think the reality is now that Montreal is in the conversation, that's where they want to go. Now, there was talk that, they'll put the Pinty Series with F1. No, that's never going to happen. NASCAR is never going to share, and more or less we'll flip that around. F1 is never going to share a weekend with NASCAR. That's not going to happen. IndyCar, sure, I could see that working. Whether IndyCar ever has any interest of going back to Montreal, I don't know. I think with Formula One being there, it says, Gord says, trucks at Oshweekon would be like Bristol. You know what, Gord? There is a track that I actually feel is great for the Truck Series if they were to come back to Canada. And unfortunately, it is sitting right now empty and not being used, and it's called Jukasa Motor Speedway. I actually think that a truck race there would be phenomenal. And the best part about that track is it's sat. The pavement has sat. It's gotten wear on it. It's gotten a couple winters on it. So if we were able to get some sort of funding to bring that track back, a Truck Series event at specifically Jukasa Motor Speedway, to me, is phenomenal. I think that would be one hell of a race. Now, as we talked about, Trans Am coming in and racing a C-Team. If you haven't seen, Trans Am puts on some amazing races. And what's really attractive to me having Trans Am come in is the example that we've seen already with that Peter Klut's been in that series. Andrew Ranger's been in that series. LP Dumoulin has raced this past year in the Trans Am series. So you could have a lot of crossover for those Trans Am events with NASCAR Pinty Series drivers. That's a very attractive offer. Not to mention, depending on what other series come with it. Now, right now, there's an American F4 series that's coming with it, which is open wheel. The interesting thing is, okay, well, does the Centra Cup, do the Canadian Sports Car Championship, do they come back? Because all of a sudden, then that weekend becomes really stacked again with a big headliner in Trans Am. Ron Longboat says, those cars rock, only asphalt races this dirt guy watches. And that's all. Hey, Rob, and you are definitely entitled to do that. One of the owners used to race with us in sprint cars. I love the Trans Am series. It's not something that I get to watching that often, but when I do get to see it, it's always a treat. And you can't tell me that if Trans Am comes back that we don't get Ron Fellows behind the wheel. Come on, the guy is Trans Am. He has been Trans Am. Sam Fellows, you can't expect that he would not be a part of that race. A lot of Cup and Xfinity drivers will hop in the Trans Am cars at Reynolds. It'll be interesting. And that's the other thing too, right? We've seen this in the past where those Trans Am races have names like Paul Menard, just Natalie Decker. Not suggesting that those names would race. Boris said for the longest time, came back and raced Trans Am. So we could easily get, I mean, if you take a look, the names that have been in this series, specifically Trans Am, are something that for me, if you go down the list here, there's some names. Sure, there's a lot of names that people maybe don't recognize. That's absolutely positively true. But if you go through this, okay, Lawless Allen, Adam Andretti, Michelle Abate, those are names that have been part of NASCAR at one point. Scott Borchetta, Matt Brabham. Obviously, Guy Cosmo, Derek Cope, Wally Dallenbach Jr., Tommy Dreese, Chris Dyson. These are names that have been part of road course racing for such a long time. Misha Goikberg, Kaz Grala, Taylor Gray, the Grays, that whole family comes out and runs Trans Am Series. Corey Heim, AJ Henriksen. Definitely know those names as well, coming from way back from ARCA. I'm just trying to get people as they come through here. I'm trying to make sure I get everybody here. Well, another one for me is Amy Ruman, one of the most probably successful female drivers in all. Justin Marks, Rafael Matos, Rafa, former IndyCar driver, Thomas Merrill, Thad Moffitt, the grandson of the King, Connor Mosack, somebody who's getting into NASCAR as it is, Jet Noland. So a lot of these names aren't maybe the most well-known. Will Rogers, a long, well-known name from motorsports. Obviously, you can't go wrong with Boris Said. William Sawalich, Michael Self, formerly of the ARCA Menard series. Sammy Smith, Mike Skeen, longtime competitor Mike Skeen. So all of a sudden you've got all these names coming in, and add some Pinty's flair to it, and I could easily see us having 4 or 5, 6 of the Pinty's drivers competing in the race here. Rob Longwood says NASCAR trucks only NASCAR races worth watching unless NASCAR goes back to old days. I'd actually disagree, Rob. For me, truck racing, this year's been a little bit better than it has in the past, but man, I haven't. For me, the best years of the truck series were 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, when you had all those veterans from the Cup Series that stepped back into that series with Todd Bodine, Mike Skinner, Ron Hornaday, Jack Sprague, Mike Bliss, Mike Wallace, Todd Bodine. I think I said Todd Bodine. Johnny Benson. What a great series it was. So good. And I've lost a lot of love for the truck series because it's not like that anymore. It's a lot of young names that have a lot of money and names that I think are being rushed up, unfortunately. We've seen it. Names like Chris Wright, Lawless Allen really aren't ready to be pushed into the truck series. And we've seen kind of guys that come in and just destroy stuff. Now, there is some veterans in Matt Crafton, Ben Rhodes, who've kind of hung around, Grant Enfinger, who their career isn't really going to go to the Cup Series. They're not going to go and do something extravagant, but they're hanging around and making it better. It's similar to like Justin Allgaier in the Xfinity Series. You need series veterans to keep stuff alive. I would love it if we had names like Matt Kenseth, if Kevin Harvick went down there after he retires this year, if Ryan Newman got a full-time ride down there again, and try and bring some of that veteran kind of dominance back and teach these young drivers how to race. Sure, there's some that have superseded this year. Obviously, Corey Heim has been a huge standout to take Tricon Garage, formerly DGR, into a championship battle. Derek Kraus, another one, Gord. Absolutely. And obviously, for me, I want to see, and this is where it comes to the schedules of these divisions. For me, I always loved when they ran at Memphis, or they ran at Mansfield, or they went to IRP, they went to I-95, Mesa Marine. You had trucks or Xfinity not racing the same weekend as Cup at the same facility. You had a lot more short track racing. I don't have the interest in NASCAR's top three divisions when they won't go to newer short tracks. Sure, Iowa has been added. I don't know if I call it a quote short track like what we see Martinsville and Bristol. It's not to that level. But I definitely think that we've got a lot of options here if they start to go back and realize, hey, short track racing is where it's at. That's why I say Ducasa is a good fit. If they're going to bring the Truck Series back, why not go to an oval and showcase the ovals that we have? We've seen Montreal time and time again. We've seen CTMP time and time again. They put on fantastic shows. And the track layouts definitely show that. They have a lot of options for drivers to take. The reality is, in Ontario, there really isn't a track that it can take on the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series. I think Delaware, I don't know if it has the infrastructure. It could definitely handle the trucks. I 100% believe it. The other tracks in Ontario just don't have it. And you know, stage racing, yeah, Gord. I mean, I agree with you on that sense. I mean, I don't think that I applaud them for trying, because I think you do have to try. You have to be inventive. You have to come up with new things to try and attract new people. However, I have a serious problem in breaking up the races. In some races, they take long enough. And adding stages, I'm totally cool with if you're going to have a stage, great, but keep the green flag out. If there's no genuine caution, then just leave it. You earn your like the road courses. You earn your points, but the race continues. In this day and age, it is so hard to get people to stay paying attention to something for 3.5 hours. More or less to stay for the entire race. I myself love short track racing. Do I ever get bored? I think there's been a race or two in my past where I've been bored, but the thing is, short track racing offers a lot more, I feel, than the 1.5 mile racetracks. The constant changing of cars, the changing of how these cars look really doesn't seem to have changed anything. I don't feel that we're flooding in with new partnerships, and as a fan, I definitely want to see stuff improve. You know, as Gord says, grassroots racing rocks, and I feel at times there is still a lot that NASCAR does forget. And it's all about, we have to be a big show. Do we remember Thompson? Thompson Speedway with SRX, when that first race that Thompson had, and the crowd was electric. It was packed. Now, would you rather have a packed house with not a single extra ticket, a single extra seat, like, say, New Smyrna Speedway for the big late model races, like not New Smyrna, but like the Five Flags for the snowflake and the snowball. Would you not love to have no extra seats, or would you rather Bristol be 3/4 empty? Sell it as a big show, but on a small playing field. Unfortunately, we've kind of reached that where we have to go to the Coliseum because that's big and that's special and that's a lot of fans. Well, you can't tell me that if you were to take that to a little short track every year, rotate it in the heart of where your fan base is, limited tickets, sell it out, make it something that people would die to go to. Rob says, with Trans Am, you are never going to know who is going to win, and that's the appeal. Exactly. I work TO security for a long time, and when the streetcars came on, the races were great. Absolutely. It's definitely a lot of fun. And you're attracting a different audience as well. So now you're attracting the Trans Am crew, the Trans Am fans that are going to see a Pinty's race as well because it's the same day. Potentially. We don't know the full schedule yet, I don't believe. But Tyler says, personally, I think if they are going through yellows, they race back to them like these. Okay, well, Tyler, that's the safety reason. That I'm okay with. Racing back was not very safe. But if they're going to throw yellows intentionally, you shouldn't, like, if it's a stage break, it's a break for what? To break up the action. Honestly, it's a very tough deal because I don't think that any of those tracks need a stage break or they need stage racing. If you want to give the points to people, sure. But I have a really big problem with the way that the racing comes together. Because when you have somebody that wins a race but is crap all year long and has a chance to win the championship, that's wrong in my opinion. You should not be rewarded for having a crap season. It's very similar to the Pinty series. It's the old school of racing where if you screw up and you have a bad weekend, you still could lose the championship. If we look at Trayton Lapsovich and say he won 6 races or whatever this year, 7 races he won this year, but doesn't win the championship because it's not the playoff, he didn't win in a playoff setting, like that still, it sounds ridiculous, right? So I understand why they're doing it. As NASCAR fans, we obviously have a lot to talk about what we like and what we don't like. This is one of those things that I'm not really a fan of. I understand why they do it. Let's see. Rob says, as a Canadian, I have to watch Stuart Friesen, but most of the races are great right to the end. Jim says, Florence, South Carolina, when Junior came, they had to cut off sales. It was too full. When Larson and High Limit came to where'd that go? Came to New England, or came to Eagle. I'm not sure where that Eagle Eagle Northeast. They had the place sold out at over 9,000 fans. This is the type of stuff that you want to be showing. If you go to Bristol and you're not selling it out, and I think Nebraska. Thank you, Jim. One of the things that I mean you could talk about is Bristol's downfall all stems back to 2007 with the progressive banking. I mean, if you've got my opinion on it, it all comes down to trying to make the top lane drivable. There was nothing wrong, in my opinion, the way that those races went before, that you had to fight for the bottom line. It was only a 1-lane racetrack. That I enjoyed. But I think adding stuff like traction compound, and it kind of ruins the tracks. We've seen Texas Motor Speed. Not saying that Texas was a great racetrack, but the Indy cars can't even run there anymore because the track's ruined. You can't race above the line or you'll wreck. I think right now we're at a point where it is definitely it's definitely where there's a lot of pluses and minuses. I mean, for us in the Pinty series, our schedule is looking better and better every year. The big rumor still seems to be Riverside Speedway. It's a rumor that I've heard from multiple people, and it's not going away. Now, I truly believe that race was going to be on last year's schedule. I believe it was initially announced in a graphic error. And the fact that I'm hearing it from so many different people makes it seem like it is a very credible rumor. I think it makes total sense. If you're already going out to Newfoundland, then go out to Riverside as well. It's a track that the drivers, a large majority of them, have been begging to have back on the schedule. I have not heard of a specific track being dropped, but I have heard that there are specific changes coming to the schedule that could be, quote, massive. Now, when I think about massive, it makes me think a big-time race. Now, the one that comes to mind would be Toronto. Now, we'd say, well, why would they get rid of Toronto? Well, it's not about getting rid of it. It's that the schedule for Toronto was delayed because they didn't get the approval signed until a couple of weeks ago. The race is now scheduled for a week later than it was last year. If that is in line with our 2023 schedule, then that takes out the Western Swing. Hence, because that Western Swing came the week after the Toronto week. So, yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Rob says, Adam Clinton said, watch it, Rob. So, first time watcher here. If I need asphalt news, this I will watch. Thank you. If I watch NASCAR, it's the big tracks. Small tracks seem to lack speed, so I need my need for speed. So big tracks, my thoughts. Absolutely, Rob. You're definitely entitled to your opinion on what you like. You're a race fan. You're allowed to have certain likes and dislikes. For me, Cup Series is where you go to those fast tracks. And that's how it should be. Think a tier system. Smaller divisions, go to your smaller tracks that lead up. I don't like having copycat schedules. I think they're boring. I think you have drivers. How many drivers in all three divisions do you have? You got to try different reach. Try different places to go. It's not the easiest thing to try and attract audiences, and we've seen it before. The problem is that they're at that position now because so many of these trucks and Xfinity teams rely on Cup Series team members to be on their pit crew, to be a part of their team on the race weekend. So they're kind of in their own kind of tough box here. There's not really anywhere that they can go because they've now gotten this experience with having available crew members every week. The reality is this isn't the early 2000s anymore. Is you're not going to attract those big time partners to the Xfinity and truck teams anymore. Not like you used to. I mean, the fact that you had a PPC Motorsports that had a Nestle sponsorship in the Busch Series back then, not the Cup Series, didn't have that sponsorship. They did. You had Albertsons supermarkets as a part of that series as well. Toys R Us. You had pretty big reputable companies across all three top divisions, and I think that whole situation is gone now. You have some brands like Dr. Pepper, McDonald's, Budweiser / Busch. But for the most part, it's not the big, well-known companies. We have names like M&M's Leave, Lowe's, Home Depot, all these brands that are well known, and they're not there anymore. It's troublesome. And it filters down to series like ours. There needs to be some sort of an approach that racing has to take in order to keep an interest for these major corporations. For us, I think it's very difficult for the Pinty series to attract big corporations because the package that we offer is so different. So different. Is it a rumor about SRX coming to Ohsweken? Yeah. There's been a rumor about that for a while. I couldn't tell you, Gord, though. I don't know much about SRX anymore. I was interested that first year, but it really hasn't been to my interest. But I have heard that rumor, yes. Whether or not it's substantiated, I have no idea. Ms. Shobas, guys, it would seem to me that the Pinty Series would need a lot of cooperation with the teams to make their schedule. If not, all the teams can gather enough crew to travel out west for a decent car count. That's part of it, Ms. Shobas, guys. That's one of my, it's not one of my wishes per se, but I almost feel that if the series went down to just a 2-province series, you would have amazing counts because the costs are gone for traveling. At least traveling far. Going out to Saskatchewan, going out to Alberta, going out to Riverside, going out to Newfoundland, that is not cheap. And while we hit the 60 driver mark this year, it's the amount of new drivers, the amount of new competitors coming in. That's where we need to look at. Jim says, at one time, Budweiser used to have NASCAR, NHRA, IndyCar, World of Outlaws boats all at once, now gone. SRX is a pricey show to have your track at. You must basically sell out to make it work with TV money. Derek Ward used to have an East and West way back with NASCAR. And that's, Derek, that's the thing to me that kind of needs to come back. If it's me, I'm looking at that RS1 series out there, seeing the traction that they're making. Now, I don't know if they have the longevity and the investments to make that a Western division, but to me, have that traveling to BC, Saskatchewan, and Alberta makes it a much more attainable goal to have a series out there, build the strength of Western Canada in racing again. Because when we went out there, Derek, how many times did we have? Sometimes 10 Western drivers that were attending races with their own cars. It is not that same time anymore. We don't have those guys that have that money that they can do it. But when you have a girl like Chantal Kalika selling their family car because they just, it doesn't make financial sense for them, it sucks. It sucks that has to happen. And it's unfortunate because not being out there, it does hurt the racing. Jim says, doesn't the Newfoundland government make sure that the travel money for the teams is there where Western swing is on the teams? I believe the ferry is covered, Jim. I don't believe everything is covered. And you have to remember, it's not just the travel. You also have hotels. You also have to have gas, food. You have all those extra expenses that you have to pay for. And, take an example of like DJ's, for example. I think DJ's team he's got maybe 6 to 8 guys. But they're preparing 4 or 5 cars. I mean, he's gotten to a point he doesn't have enough help to go out to these tracks and have a full team. That's why the drivers that are that are renting cars have to bring their own team with them. And that's where I look at it and go, okay, you have a Western division of the NASCAR Pinty Series. Maybe that's got some funding. That's got some legs. They can go out to Area 27 for a road course race. They can go out to Penticton Speedway. They can go to Sutherland Automotive. They can go to Edmonton. You can build a little division right there. Make it 6 races throughout the entire summer. Now, whether or not they have any interest in working with NASCAR, I don't know. A lot of them are former NASCAR competitors with the Seabirds. Noel Dowler's out there, Cameron Haley, all former names. Sean McIntosh, Mark McIntosh out there as well. We've seen J.R. Fitzpatrick, Gary Clute, J.P. Bergeron all run out there. Jason White. So you take Jason White, you take the Seaberts, you take Noel Dowler, Chantel Kalika, Brett Taylor, Jamie Krizik. All of a sudden, you've got some oomph to that series. You've got some of the names. And they could very well make that and build it back up. It's just a matter of like dollars and cents, right? I don't see that teams are going to be able to make that investment, and that's why we end up with 18 cars. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I mean, obviously 18 is still solid, but we don't want to get to the point where we were at Riverside, I think a couple of years ago, and there's 13 cars showing up. And if that's going to be what's going to happen, why make that move? You've got a lot of tracks in Ontario, a lot of tracks in Quebec, not that much in total. So where you can stay is where the teams are from, where the teams are situated, limit the costs, build up the money in the pockets of the owners, try and get that provincial interest. The problem is the series is a national series. But we're not attracting, right now, it doesn't appear, we're not attracting countrywide businesses. We're not attracting countrywide teams. Honestly, what would be interesting is if we had somebody like a Michael Jordan-esque Canadian owner. I mean, to me, I'd say like somebody like a Ryan Reynolds, who is a racing fan, who's been at races, has businesses of his own. I thought about this earlier. Jim Treleving from Dragon's Den, somebody else that's been been involved in motorsports previously. Obviously, you've got like Glenn Stiers is right now probably the biggest name involved in the motorsport in our series in terms of being a team owner. Obviously, you have DJ Kennington, you have Ed Hackinson, Scott Stackley, guys that have done it. But then we want to look towards, I mean, if you go like to JP Bergeron, I mean, he's got Dave Jacobs as his car owner. Dave Jacobs is not a really well-known name across Canada. And that's not his fault. But if all of a sudden you have Kyle Steckley driving for Drake, all of a sudden that gets some interest. That gets more people. I mean, it's an odd thing to suggest, but that's kind of what the route we need is somebody that has a lot of pull, a lot of name, to try and help. And Derek says it's an expensive sport, gets worse every day. He's absolutely right. I mean, the cost through and through is so difficult. So that's what I'm just suggesting. Even if it's only a a temporary one-season deal where, okay, we're going to race 14 races, 6 in Quebec, 8 in Ontario for the season. And give it a year. Just to try and see what we can get out of it. Obviously, it's not ideal for the Western fans and for the Maritime fans. But I think that there's a couple of things for this series that they could work on, and a development series would be one of them. And obviously, it's a series close to my heart, but the Ontario Sportsman Series is the best option. I had this conversation with a former driver in the series, and he had said, why isn't there a development series? Because the problem that we face right now, Ed Hackinson is up there in age. Scott Steckley's been doing this for a while. DJ's been doing it forever. Forever and ever and ever. Are these names going to be here forever and ever and ever? Jim Bray is in his 90s. You have to look to the future for car owners. And we need team owners. We need drivers to move up into this series. Having a development series where somewhere, even where the cars can be passed down so that they aren't just sitting around in someone's barn. They're being used, which we desperately need. We need cars to move down the line, be used, and also give opportunities for racers that need some extra experience. You can't tell me that Amber Balkin, for example, getting opportunity in the OSS race at Delaware the week before did not help her. It did. Now, obviously, the car wasn't to what she was hoping, but that's what you need. We've seen Alex Gannett do it out at Flamborough, and I definitely think that there's... Well, Jim says you need to clone about 5 Paillet. Realistically, yes, but the other side of it too, Jim, is that's not really fixing the solution, and I think that's what we do. Those names you just mentioned, if they decided to take even one season off, what would the series do? That's it right there, Mr. Showbiz Guy. That's it right there. That's the question mark. I look at this and go, okay, can DJ continue if he loses Castrol? Right now, 22 Racing has 3 cars. Tag brings all of his funding. Kyle's got APC. Trayton, he's needed some help. And Glenn Steyer's helped him out. But what happens if Kyle Steckley has a career in late models down south and moves down there? Does Scott continue his late model program and his Pinty's team? Or does he try to follow? Guy who owns Formula Ford owns numerous dealerships. We need guys like this to have an interest. Absolutely. Even having a guy who owns multiple dealerships for Ford to have a Ford car in the OSS series so that it starts small and builds its way up. It's similar to what J.C. Paillet has done, and he has tried to get Chevrolet interested. Derek Warwood says, we bought an Oldsmobile in 95, Peter and Mark Dilley, that ended up winning a championship 4 years later as a sportsman. That is exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying, Derek. That's what needs to happen, is give those cars a place to live because they still have a purpose. Right now, there's cars in the OSS series that are old Pinty's cars, that are old Cascar chassis from 2000. There's one from 89. There's one from 72. These things are old, but cars have lots of life if you take care of them. But the reality is we need them. We need this series to be able to keep life for stock cars. Now, I think NASCAR made a little bit of a boo-boo when they didn't take Sportsman with them back in 2007. Because if they had kept that division as well, you don't know what could have come out of it. We don't know if teams could have been able to make those jumps and do it. Even if it was a one-off race, then you're still getting some sort of interest, the local flair. But it's also very important because what it could do is keep people interested, keep people racing that can't go out to Western or Atlantic Canada. Take Larry Jackson. If he can't make that race because of funding, well, you know what? O'Neill is still so big here in Ontario that he goes and runs an OSS race at Peterborough. The biggest issue a lot of the times is it comes down to the name. It comes down to recognition. It comes down to TV. It comes down to a lot of exposure. So that's why if we had kept a division like that, given it the same type of exposure, maybe would have had a little bit different situation going on right now. But right now we have to rebuild. I know people look and go, the APC series. Well, no, the APC series is not compatible to this series. You can ask any late model driver that have said that these cars are not similar at all to late models. And in fact, late models to me are on par with the Pinty series in terms of rivaling being the best series in Ontario. In terms of APC, meaning it is the premier late model series in all of Ontario, probably all of Canada right now. And the Pinty series is a stock car series across Canada. Well, the APC series, you work from your weekly late model divisions to get to the APC series. But for the stock cars in the Pinty series, you don't necessarily go through the OSS, which might be something that we need to look at. There's definitely positives. And the fact that we're having that discussion that, hey, this is something that could really work. I mean, back in the day, even Sportsman, way back, we talked NASCAR 2000, they had a Sportsman division that ran Ontario and in Quebec. Ideal situation. Because all of a sudden now, you have those names in Quebec getting an opportunity to race. You have Delaware Speedway finale, and you have the OSS race precursor, a pre-race before the big Pinty's race. Then all of a sudden, you could have a whole bunch of different names out there. You heard it here. Glenn Stiers will have a better year next year. Yes, he will. Rob, I agree with you. Lots of change happening for Glenn. Good change. The fact of the matter, I really think that Glenn Stiers has got a ton of stuff in the fire right now. A new Facebook page popped up, and it leads me to believe that we're going to have a Glenn Stiers Racing car in quite possibly every form of asphalt racing right now. In your top three, your super stocks, your APC, and your Pinties. That's what it looks like. Glenn's not going to let running last or having struggles every week continue. He's building not just a team. He is building a mega team right now. You can see it. And he's put together these chassis building for his sprint cars. Not only that, he's building a home for Indigenous racers to potentially get opportunities to race in the Pinty series. He's one of those names that could come out of completely left field and all of a sudden it's GSR Speedway, formerly known as Jukasa Speedway. If there's a guy that could do it, it would be him. I don't know if it's ever crossed his mind that of owning a dirt track and an asphalt track. But to me right now, he's the closest that we have to a savior. His crew are mostly rookies. Yes, as soon as they will get it down pat, they will rock. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the Pinty series is better because we have Glenn Stires in it. No questions asked. Absolutely 100% better. And anytime I see him, he's smiling. Even despite all the bad luck that he's had, he has a great time. Stricken is still on the schedule for next year, Jim. They signed a 3-year deal, so they'll be back again next year. I don't believe it's going to be a double race, though. I think it's just going to be the one. If Strickens not on the schedule, I hope it's because he doesn't want one, because he has been so important to racing. Canada. It would be bad if they took it away. Don't see it happening. I don't think they're going to take it away. It's just depending if he wants it following this year. Last year didn't really go as well with the double races. I think just doing the one is probably better. Hype it up, build it, make it a big special event. But at this rate, like I said, there's a lot of off-season conversation that we can continue to have here. You know, if he does, I'll run camping like I do with Schweeken. Jacusa rocks, plus Alex can get Jukasik back to par. Alex is already keeping it. That's the thing, Rob. If Alex Nagy they weren't upkeeping it, I'd be more worried. But the fact that they're making sure that the place has the grass cut, that they're keeping the property, they're checking in on the property. He had, I believe, they've had a couple people rent it out for testing. It's still there. They've been demolishing it for at least 3 years now, Al. It's constantly people talking that it's been demolished. The only people you can actually ask is Alex Nagy and his team. Last conversation that I had actually heard on this was that there was some interest potentially of a sale. Now, whether or not that is going to happen, I don't know. To me, you bring it back as Kenny Hill Speedway. That's what you do. He deserves it. For what he did to bring it back, to make the events that he made it, it needs to be in his name. Yes, Jukasa, obviously. Kenny Hill Speedway at Jukasa. It's just a matter of somebody pulling the trigger. A lot of people talk to Dale Jr. I don't think Jr. is the type of guy that would do it. He's got a lot of investment in short tracks in the U.S., but if there's somebody that would be campaigning for the Cup Series or for people to come up to Ontario, Dale's talked about wanting people to go racing in Canada. Matt Weaver loves Jukasa Speedway. He's somebody that could campaign. At the end of the day, Bubba Pollard has won on that racetrack multiple times. He's somebody that can be campaigning for it. It's just a hard thing to see a racetrack after such a big investment only last a couple more seasons after it coming back. But Kenny Hill Speedway, I mean, to me, sounds the way to go. And again, if you do that, then the Pinty Series has got to be back there. I know it's a different time, but Cayuga was a huge, well-known racetrack in North America. Junior is not buying any more racetracks. He sold off the ones he was part of. Exactly. Junior, I think he's making the call, man. I think he wants to do that Cup team. He wants to do something as part of his future. He's trying to get rid of those other properties. He's making the big investment because he's got to take the time to do it properly. I think you look at like Tony Stewart. Don't think he would be interested in it. It's tough because we really don't have names out there that could do it. I look at Glenn Stires being the guy, or you have an investment of like I thought about it, if it's called the Crown Jewel, get Crown Royal to pay for it. You know, I know Diageo might not be interested, but make it literally Crown Royal Raceway. I mean, that sounds pretty wicked. It's just a sad reality, unfortunately, that we've got it sitting, and you know, it hopefully doesn't go down the same road as Barrie and Kawartha, and Kawartha, I believe Al is the one that is actually being demolished now. I don't know so much about Jacasa, but I do believe I've heard that Kawartha has now started to get its lighting taken down. That's the thing. For a track that was supposedly gone 3 years ago, it is still there. And hopefully we can do more and continue this conversation off-site. Those Cup drivers don't have the money to blow like they did 20 years ago. That's the reality, Jim. Doesn't pay like it used to. I said, if anything, you got to get the guys from before them, like the Jeff Gordons, the Jimmy Johnsons, and well, we've already had a Jeff Gordon attempt. Using Hill's name would be a great idea, plus run a memory race. Well, it would be. I think you do the Kenny Hill Short Track Nationals. Forgot the Canadian part of it. Make it the Kenny Hill Short Track Nationals. The family might say yes to a sale. I would hope. I would hope. I just want to see it, man. That's all I want to see. Yeah, Barrie Speedway, man. Never got to actually see a race there, Derek. But anyways, you guys have been great. We've had a great conversation this week. We'll be back next week for episode 63 of the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour. Not so much Pinty's talk because there's not as much news to talk about, but we have lots of great stuff to continue our conversation about Jacasa Speedway. Memories, maybe we'll talk about Barrie Speedway next week. We'll talk about my track that I grew up on at Mosport. Can you imagine Junior on the track would be awesome. Could draw a few big series to the track. It very well could, like the Cars Tour. Rob, could you imagine seeing the Cars Tour late models coming up and racing at Jacasa? Oh, God, I would love that. I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming in and watching the show tonight. Participating, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to GeForce TV so you can get each and every amazing product that we put out. And we will catch you guys all next week here